right, we're going to dump the news again because we've got him here and he's been busy and he may have heard that, but also we've been talking this morning about this remarkable re-education camp being set up for real estate agents. Joining us now is the ACT Party leader, David Seymour. David, how are you?
Oh, well, thanks, Sean. Apologies for the mix-up.
That's all right.
Glad to be here now.
We're busy people. Look, I hope you've had a chance to look at and we broke the story this morning. Every real estate agent in the country is going to have to undergo 1.5 hours of training on Māori culture and Te Tiriti. It's going to be provided, we understand, by a Māori polytechnic based out of Tauranga, though the real estate authority hasn't finished the syllabus yet. And suddenly today, having broken the story, I've got people writing in from all sorts of organisations, plumbers organisations, nurses organisations, someone who's going to teach someone painting. It seems that anything associated with the government now requires people who want to work there or get contracts to have done some sort of cultural re-education course.
Well, I just want to go back to what the Real Estate Authority says its purpose is. You may have already covered this. Our purpose is to promote and protect the interests of consumers buying and selling real estate and to promote public confidence in the performance of real estate agency work. Now, I just asked the question, if we want to understand why there's so much waste in government, why everything costs so much, why people are struggling to make ends meet, it's because too many organisations do too much stuff that does not connect with their purpose. And this is such a good example. In fact, a lot of the distraction that is going on is to do with this twisted interpretation of the Treaty of Waitangi, that if you want to be a good person in New Zealand, then you have to be indoctrinated to think in a certain way. And I suspect that a large part of the bloat and growth in government waste is because of precisely this sort of activity. If we want to be a world-class country, first world living standards in an island paradise, which should be our national goal, then we need to actually get organisations back to its actual purposes, such as promote and protect the interests of consumers buying and selling real estate.
David, this is now, though, it seems, so permeating every aspect of every government department or statutory board or organisation. I see AMP have just made a big announcement that they're going to culturally change to be a treaty-based organisation. It is a madness that is spreading like wildfire in this country.
Yep, and this is why we need a referendum on co-governance. Specifically, Parliament needs to pass an act that says this is what the treaty says. It says we're a modern, multi-ethnic, liberal democratic state with a place for everybody, one person, one vote. That's what our country is about. And then you've got a directive to the whole society, public and private. If you want to be a good citizen, which is I think at heart a lot of people think that's what they're doing by going along this path. If you want to be a good citizen, then actually you've got to stand for inclusion and tolerance. But fundamentally, you're here to stand up for the rights of every person, so you can't force one doctrine on everybody and think that it's a good thing.
Well, how can we have that when our Human Rights Commission has just, and I was just reading it out, jumped through hoops to pointedly not say anything about a poem that I believe should be performed and can be performed, but they will not get involved in a poem that encourages young women to get knives and go hunting white men?
Well, it's worse than that. It's not just that they won't do anything. It's that they've engaged in the rhetoric, and if you look at their statement on their website, the Human Rights Commission is saying, well, because people are very oppressed, perhaps it's okay. So they're actually out there trying to, almost justify or give reason for the actions behind the poem. This is why the Human Rights Commission has to go. And we are building the case almost daily now that they are highly selective, that they don't do their job properly, they don't have a proper understanding of or commitment to human rights, and certainly not for all humans. And therefore, in the next government, the Human Rights Commission will basically be gone. There'll be a Human Rights Review Tribunal, one that actually hears individual cases and gets people justice if there's a genuine violation. And, there are cases of that that should be dealt with. But in terms of their function, and it's the first function in the Human Rights Act, is that they are there to offer commentary and encourage harmonious race relations. That they clearly can't do that because they are philosophically biased and practically incapable. So that's why they've got to be gone. And and again, a party vote for ACT is a party vote to get rid of the Human Rights Commission, among many other things.
David, you can talk a good game on this, and it's a consistent game. You haven't been hypocritical about it in the time I've known you. But the problem is, you say we'll get rid of the Human Rights Commission. You say you'll stop the re-education camps for the 16,668 real estate agents in New Zealand. But I'm sorry, if you get in, and that's a big if now with the resurgence of the Labour Party, you'll be governing with National. And I'm sorry, but your potential senior partner in government shows every indication of being as woke, middle of the road and snowflakey as Labour is.
Yeah, and that's actually the problem that all of us have, Sean, including me. I'm a voter. I can put my vote with one party, and because of MMP, that party is not going to be the old elected dictatorship. They're going to have to fight with other parties within coalition, and they may or may not get everything they want. That doesn't change the fact that as a voter, just pretend for a moment I'm not actually, the leader of ACT. As a voter, by far and away, my best bet is to help get more ACT MPs in, because every extra ACT MP pushes the balance towards getting that agenda through. But you're absolutely right. It's MMP, and we've got a national party that has now been in government 5 times, starting in 1949. And in 1949, Sid Holland said that all this socialism the Labour Party's brought in is terrible, it will stop. And even without a coalition partner to contend with, Sid Holland kept every aspect of Labour's original command and control economy and its welfare states. And of course, it's happened another 4 times. Keith Holyoake in 1960, Rob Muldoon in 1975, Jim Bolger in 1990, John Key in 2008. Now, it's possible that Chris Luxon is going to be different. However, I think the only thing that will make a difference is a big contingent of
Okay, and you know what? And how hard you push this, because I've long said these are fundamental issues to many middle New Zealanders. Would you refuse to get National into government if they weren't going to roll back the Human Rights Commission and stop this madness?
We'll put it this way, a vote for ACT is a vote to change the government. Our votes will be there to make sure Labour aren't in. But then there's a second question, which is what sort of relationship does ACT have with the National Party? Now, in a perfect world, they're going to sign up to an agenda of real change, and it's all going to be tickety-boo, and we'll sit around the cabinet table together, and ACT MPs like me and Brooke Van Velden and Nicole McKee and Simon Court and so on will become ministers and very effective ministers in that government. That's the good scenario. The scenario that we're prepared to do, and I have talked to all of our current MPs and potential candidates and said, look, we may have to hang tough and say National will be a minority government. We will use our votes to ensure Labour can't form a government. But every time National wants to get something done, they're going to have to come to us and say, will you vote for this? Will you vote for that? What about the other thing? I suspect that after a short time of playing that game, they'll say, actually, this is ridiculous. Can we make some concessions? So one way or another, the one thing we won't do is what certain other people have done, where as soon as you get the baubles of office, you're in the beehive, you've got the limo, you've got the higher salary, well, then you just forget about all the people that voted for you. That's one thing I can guarantee we won't do. But a lot of what we're able to achieve does actually come down to, is the National Party, because ultimately they need to vote for the stuff that we need.
Would an ACT party stop, would an ACT party, if similar circumstances were to arise again, stop real estate agents having to be re-educated in this way?
Well, if you look at the real estate, I'm not trying to avoid your question, but let me just say, the options you have are to basically sack the board. So what you'd have to do in this circumstance is say, look, this has to stop. We believe that the board are in breach of the objectives of the Real Estate Authority and their legislation. This is not part of their job, and it arguably violates the political freedom and human rights of real estate agents. Therefore, that board has to go. Then you're in a standoff. You've probably got a National Party minister who's responsible for appointing them. You've got a cabinet, and we're going to have to trade there. So my point is that without ACT, you're going to have nobody making that point. with ACT, I think there's a good chance that we end up getting the board to pull their heads in, or replacing the board with people that are actually committed to the objectives of real estate, which is protecting and promoting the profession and the consumers trying to buy and sell real estate. So that's how it plays out. And I know there will be people that say, well, look, I've got my vote, I want everything my way. But what I'm trying to say to people is that, if you've got one vote, you can only get so much bang for your buck, but I would argue that by giving your vote to ACT, you're going to get a lot more bang for that buck than anyone else.
David, I thank you very much indeed for your time this morning. I know it is a busy time, and I'm sure the real estate agents will be listening intently to all of this. I thank you for your time. That is the ACT Party leader, David Seymour.